George Tall was one of the main leaders of Yellow Thunder Camp over the years. Right now I'm sitting on a stump behind where his teepee was, looking down past the dam and where the solar shower used to be during YTC. And after George's funeral, I spent several days trying to think of exactly what I could say or what I should say here, and it was too much. I knew that I could never get everything on, so I figured I'd just sit down and start talking about him and do the best I could. George Tall was always known as a defender of the land, as a defender of the Black Hills, and he worked and fought hard to liberate the Black Hills, especially this tiny little 800-acre piece that we knew as YTC or Yellow Thunder Camp. And he worked to liberate Stronghold Table in the Badlands and to protect the remains of our ancestors who were slaughtered there just a couple weeks after Wounded Knee. It was a massacre that was really well hidden, and so the United States of America was doing, just a few years ago, was doing their best to keep it covered up and to remove the remains of the ghost dancers who were assassinated there, and their bodies just pushed over the edge of Stronghold Table. And as a Tokala and as a Lakota man, George did a lot on the reservation and off the reservation. Russ used him quite a lot here because George is a Lakota speaker, and so when he needed someone to translate something or to add that authentic Lakota touch to something, then whether it was here at YTC or in Pine Ridge years later, and he always went to George for that. George never asked for anything in return for all he had done, and damn near all the time he never got anything in return for what he did. But he didn't have a problem with that because he wasn't doing it for fame or fortune. He was doing it because he felt that what he did was right and that it was necessary. So as a Tokala and as a Lakota man, George did what needed to be done, even when it was difficult. Like that main Tokala song says, he always put himself in the forefront when there was work to be done, but then in the background whenever there was whenever the people trying to make a name for themselves or wanted to step into the spotlight, if that makes any sense. And I can't remember how many years George was here, but if you had to make a short list of 2 or 3 people and say who was, of the most important people at Yellow Thunder Camp, then George's name would be in there right on top. It's funny, I had so many things I could have said about him, and then now I just end up kind of speechless. If you were at Yellow Thunder Camp, and if you spent enough time here to really know George Tall, then you already understand what kind of a man he was and how important this place was to him and how important he was to this place. There were quite a few people from Wounded Knee District who stayed here. There was George's nephew, my buddy John Lynn, and several other members of George's family. There was Jerry Barr, Evans Whiteface, Mumbles Little Moon. Even the main #1 camp dog, Hombre, came from Wounded Knee District. And there were others too, like I said. Anderson and Wounded Knee were very well represented here. We were honored at a powwow. There was just 5 of us, myself and George included, who went to it back in the early 80s at Wounded Knee District School in Manderson, where the elders honored Yellow Thunder warriors for what we were doing here for the people at Yellow Thunder Camp and for Kaisapa, the sacred Black Hills. And there's just, I'm going to have to put a second part on here. I guess it's important to show on here how difficult it is to say a few things about a man who meant so much to this place and who did so much with his life. There's more things that should be mentioned, and no matter how many videos I made for YouTube, I could never express everything that George did. But I want it to be understood that George was truly a defender of the Black Hills, and that he was a good Nacha for the Tokala Okala Kitche, and that of all the people who came through here for a weekend and then years later tried to call themselves Yellow Thunder vets, and for all of us who really put in time and put our lives on the line here for more than a year, everybody who came through here, we all owe a debt of gratitude to George Tall. And I know that this place here will miss him as much as we all do. But now he's gone home, and he's in a much happier, much healthier place. So I'm grateful to George personally for all that he did for this land and for the Lakota Oyate Ramatakulas.